Hi everyone. Okay, in this video, I'm going to speak to you about historizing and the trend lines. Now, this isn't really going to be a tutorial devoted to just manually setting these up, because setting them up is fairly easy to do. The thing I'm going to explore, and you'll see me go through the process, as with all of these videos. Typically, I've not done too much in advance. I know, typically, if it's something that is slightly more complicated to do than just copying and pasting an Infosys example, then I kind of stop where I am. So sometimes you'll see there's code already been sort of trialed, but this is the point where I reach where I think, hang on, stop doing this now. Let's make a video on it, because I'm doing discovery again, and this is what I like to share with you all. So one of the questions that's come up recently is, how do we dynamically start and stop trends and have them on a trend line graph? So good question. There we go. And we're going to run through that now. What I'm going to do, though, is just show you how to manually set up a trend line graph, and then hopefully we'll progress to this full implementation of then having it dynamic. So the first thing you can see here in Twinket, I've just got two integers running, myint1, myint2, and they're just rolling up to 100 and then restarting. So that's pretty much it for the base project. Just going to move that out of the way now. And on desktop view, I've just got a few controls here already. There's no code behind them so far, but let me just show you what I've done. So when we do historizing, we have to bring in the NuGet package for the SQLite historizer. So that's, you can see I've already added that here, but that's just a case of going through manage NuGet packages, going to browse official, and then scroll down until you find the SQLite historize and just install it. Once that is done, you'll then have access to the server configuration from setting up a historized symbol, plus you can now attach these to these trend line graphs. So manual configuration, how would we normally do that? I tend to go up into the little C button, which is Twinket configuration. We'll be going in and saying all symbols main myint2, and I'm just going to say that I'm just going to map myint2 for the moment. We're going to leave myint1 for being automatically historized. We will still have to map it. One thing that Twinket HMI can't do is I can't just refer to symbols in the PLC if I haven't mapped them. It can't discover them. So from JavaScript. So I may as well actually let's just bring both of them in for the moment. So let's just map symbols. So I've got both of the symbols now mapped, but I'm only going to historize the one of them. So historizing symbols here, you can see we've got this new tab. In order to set historize settings, you just right click on it. So I'm going to do number 2, historize settings. And we'll just use the defaults for the moment. So it's going to be recorded every 1 second. And that's done. So that will now turn up in these historized. Perfect. That's what we're after. And good. I'm going to shut that down. Now, adding this to the into this trend line graph, I'm just going to go across here and select line graph description. And we'll say add to this one. And the symbol itself, we're going to select a historized symbol, which will now appear in our list, because that's the only thing you're allowed to do. Okay, this. And we're just going to attach it to the original y-axis, and that's probably enough for now. And from that one there, I'll go on to the live view. And if I drag live view across, you can see now it's historizing. So pretty simple to historize a symbol. That's all the steps you need in order for Twinket HMI to now start historizing, and it'll historize as the user logs on. And start showing them the values. All good to go. There we go. Okay, so that's that. One thing I have noticed, and I am going to report this to HQ, is toolboxes. It seems as if the toolbox itself unloads whenever I do a NuGet package. So hopefully by the time you see this, this won't be an issue. But if ever you have it, you can just go in, unload the project itself, load it back in, and it all comes back again. So, but it's not an ideal step, obviously, because it breaks up the flow. While that's doing its job, I'm just going to show you the Infosys pages that we're going to be using. So in here, what we can find is in our usual, which is Twinket 3 engineering, TE2000 HMI engineering, we go framework API references. TC HMI, that's the namespace that we normally hit in JavaScript. TC HMI dot. And then we get access to all of these things inside. So the thing that we're going to be looking into is this server historize. So that's our way in. We're going to look to see if we can implement these, probably add ex2. I typically go for the ex's or the ex2s because sometimes they've made some functions which are slightly easier to use, or we'll see. So add and remove, I'm going to say. That's probably going to be the one. So this is going to hopefully add and remove symbols from the historizer. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be part of the trendline graph either. So we may need to do a bit of extra coding to add and remove them from the trendline. And one of the things is setting it up manually first, you can start exposing what's been done. So instead of trying to work out how do I code it all from scratch, manually set it up and then ask the framework to show you what it's done behind the scenes. So that's my usual way. While I'm talking as well, let's just hit reload. So I'll just bring that back in again. Again, I like to show you almost warts and all when I code here, because there's always going to be little bits and pieces that pop up. So hopefully a few of you have seen this occur, and now you know how to bring your Toolbox back up. That's pretty much it. So once you don't touch that anymore, you're good to go. So that's hopefully not too much of an issue. Things I am going to do first. So anytime I do discovery, I tend to use Google Chrome for doing this. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that you can use. I'm going to call this one, just for the moment, chart. And the reason I'm doing that is I want that to be small because I'm going to type it. So I don't want TCH, my blah, 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 blah. So that's the first step I'm going to take. I've also got live view running behind the scenes. And obviously you can see the errors where this all switched off and switched back on again. So what I should be able to do now, hey, there we go. I might actually need to refresh live view because it was a restart. So open Google Chrome. You can see where the data itself was interrupted during that power off of the engineering server. And so far so good. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just going to inspect, so I get my console window up, and now I can start doing things like tchmi, that namespace, server dot, and then we've got hopefully the historize. So this is where this all lives. All this namespace here is what ties in with this namespace here. Now, the first thing I'm going to look at is seeing if I can retrieve what's been historized. Because at the moment I've done it on PLC my int 2, so that's completely valid. So what I can do is I've got this get, or even get ex2. Let's just have a quick look at this one here and just scroll down to the example. So hopefully this should allow me to get that symbol, and we can just have a little look inside of it. So the example, we'll just change that to my int 2. And what's happening here is they're going to put these both into, so this data, so if there's an error, so if there's no error, I'm going to just have two variables made, which aren't going to do anything at the moment, otherwise else out with an error. You can see here data.key and data.settings. Clearly, when it's successful, we get a couple of things come back to us. So, I'm keen to see what's inside both of those. Instead of actually interrogating if there's an error, do this or not, I may as well just console log what comes back. So console log data, because if it's going to have an error in it, it'll have the error in it. If it's got the key and the settings, then we can see that as well. So let's just go with this. So we can see here it's return me an object, and there's no error in there, so that's good, successful. We do have a key, so it's actually replied back just the variable name that I asked it for in the first place. And plus as well, we can see that we've got this little object. You can see it's an object because it's got curly braces. And the object, and it's got some properties to it, and it's PT1S, so 1 second, how many inches we're going to do, recording, is it enabled, and row limit. So one thing that might be worthwhile doing is just see what happens if we turn the recording off while it's being traced. So that's probably worthwhile. So let's just go back to our trusty Infosys, because we've got an update. So let's just try doing an update instead. So we've got this one here. Oh, there we go. Look, even recording enable false. So they're even predicting what we're going to be doing. So there we go. So var settings, they're making a variable, they're making an object called settings. And inside it, they're setting recording enabled as false. This one here, we just need to make it the same as our variable name, int2. And again, we may as well just console log out the data, see what actually occurs. Because error, no error, we'll still see it with the console log. We're updating these settings, and clearly it's only taking the single thing. So there was no error, and obviously as well, it's actually spat out a code from this. There was a code that comes back on this update, and that's it. The historize has stopped. It's still got its values there, but now we've successfully stopped it. Let's just see if we can do the reverse of that. And I'm going to set that as true. And let's just do that one as well. So true, it resumes. You can now see the space in the data as well. Okay, so that's valid. That's completely valid. We can now start and stop a recording. The next thing I would like to do is, obviously, we've got some data left over here. So that's definitely keeping the original data. Now, we could, because, again, we've got a certain amount of maximum entries, you could still keep the original data. There's nothing wrong with that. And then every time we start and stop, what we could do is change where this thing is displayed from. Because if we stop the trace, okay, we stop it wherever it is, and the data just stops. But if we say, hey, start again, maybe we don't want to display this data here. We just want to display it from where we started. So that's completely possible with these trendline graphs. We have the ability to set what time it takes, like when should we display from, and at the moment it's just set from the very start. So so that might be worth a quick look at. So let's just see if we can delve into that. So historize. This is actually going to be a control. So I'm just going to go into control. It's probably a back off control and trend line chart. There we go. This one here. So we've got get start, get the start attribute, end. I would say it's going to be those ones. Get start, get end. We can also see as well if we drop onto. I'm just going to move this one out of the way because we've got live view in the other one. This part here, start. There we go. First and latest. So that's fairly valid. Obviously we can. Let's just prove that out first. So just going to drop onto here. We know that my chart was called chart. That's what I did at the very start. So I can say tchmi dot controls dot get chart. Oops, chart, and we get the chart. You can already see it's predicting that I'm going to hit enter, and it's actually running it first and showing a potential partial result. So so I don't need to do that at the moment. I can say, well, actually, let's just stick it in a variable. So var my chart. There we go. Because now I don't have to ever type that again. My chart is equal to this. So now if I say my chart, oops, dot. So I've got all the bits and pieces now. My chart is currently living in that variable. Handy. So let's go back to Infosys. Get start. That looks pretty plain and simple. Get start. And it's first. There you go. And it's a string. So we can see it's a string first. Therefore, set start will take a string. Happy with that. But if I want to do time, obviously I don't know what type of time format it takes. And by far the easiest way of doing this, I was hoping then it was going to allow me to set a time this way, but it's not going to allow me. So I was hoping I could just select some form of time to start. So let's have a little look. Instead, we'll go in this way. So set start time using a string instead. Let's give it a go. So it's not actually telling us what type of string, as in the time itself. Let's just see if there's anything in here, which I'm not too sure if it will be. Nope, nothing really. Get actual start time. Let's give that a go. Get actual start time gets the currently set value for that actual start time attribute. Let's give that a go. Because again, it's always a bit of experimentation with this type of thing. My chart dot get actual start time. There we go. Perfect. So that's what it's actually using. So with that in mind, can I, and we can see here, it's a bit of an obscure time. It's obviously taking a different time to my time at the moment, but again, I can live with that. There's going to be some sort of localization time or something along those lines. So so let's just take this value, and I'm going to now use that in my chart. Oops, my chart dot set start, and it's going to take a new value. It's going to be a string, I'm going to say, because that's what it passed back to me. Let's just paste that in. And instead of 617 start, I'm going to put that up to, I don't know, let's say 20. Hopefully we should see it. Oh, that's and 17 seconds and 20 seconds. All right, that's not. Let's bump that up by a couple of minutes because we've definitely been running a few minutes. There we go. Let's go with this and let's just see if it shoves. There we go, and it shoved up as well. And yeah, so it's definitely displaying it to us local time, which it is, but it's feeding it back to us in a different time. We do have functions. There are functions in here. Localization, I'm pretty sure it's in here. Get time, so parse int, parse date, format date. So there's definitely a way of formatting the date to the localized time. So we can run it through. I don't want to I normally diverge a little bit on my videos, but in this one I'm just going to play this one a little bit safe at the minute and just say, yes, there's some time, and if you're interested, I'll make a video on actually setting up the time and how we're going to format this time so it suits. So that's a little bit too far off topic at the moment, because this is about setting up dynamic. How do I now say, hey, I want to trend int 1 that I haven't set up, I want it to be dynamic, and what happens to the data if I take away, if I add and remove data? So let's try that one to start with. So that set start, I want to put that back as it was, because set start, we know that if I give it first, it will go back to the first of the data. So let's just put that in. Nice. The next thing I'm going to do is remove. Let's just see what the remove does of the historize. So back into server, go to historize and remove ex2. Let's just go straight in with the remove and see what occurs. So just drag this one out back into here. We're removing my int2, and if there's any errors, don't care, console.log data. So tell me what comes back. Awesome. There we go. So that clearly worked. The trend line chart isn't happy because get trend line data. It's not happy with that. That's definitely gone amiss. So that leads me to believe that we're going to have to remove it from the trend line first, just to stop ourselves having errors show up, because no one likes to see an error message. And let's see if we can put it back. Let's see what happens when we put it back. So we're going to go back in. We'll do add ex2, and here we go. Let's just copy this across. Whoa, let's not shut that one down. And we're going to go here, my int2. And one of the things that I'll just keep the same for the time being is we're going to time this every second. Recording enabled is true. And again, as well, console log it out, console.log data. I know if I don't do that, there'll be an error, and I won't know what it's doing. So what we got there, error code 305. Error in error command in symbol, errors is a type mismatch. Okay. I can see it in here. Type mismatch on interval, and I can see pt1 lowercase s. Everything in JavaScript is very, very pedantic when it comes to pedantic. It's case sensitive. It's not pedantic by any sense. So let's give that a go. There we go. Error code. Perfect. And the chart started up. And one of the things we can see here, now this is something I did know beforehand because just in my random playing, taking away, actually removing it from the historizer, removes the data. The data's now not available anymore. And then bringing a symbol back onto the historizer starts again. So far so good. So that's feeling okay now. I feel that we've got a bit of a setting here for if we wanted to, I may or may not do this in the video, push buttons where we historize my int1, historize my int2. So because I kind of now feel that I'd want a button that says start and stop, historize 1 and 2. All we're going to be doing is adding and removing them from the historizer, from the Historize SQLite Historize extension, just using add ex and remove ex2. So that's pretty valid. The other thing I would just want to double check though is how do I keep the trend line graph tidy? Because if I can do this
successfully with my int2 and have no errors,
we're on to a winner then. There's nothing to stop me then doing that for my int1 from scratch with absolutely no settings in the historizer at all. So let's do that last thing now. Let's have a little look. We'll go back into the trend because clearly it doesn't like having the historized symbols almost ripped out from underneath it because it was currently watching them. Now, when we did the manual version of this, what we were doing is setting the line graph descriptions. So again, read them first. If you read them first, you then know what type of data comes back. So that's just get line graph descriptions. So I can still use my chart because I still have that locked away in a variable. And we can say get line graph descriptions. So show me what comes back. We can see it gives me back an array. So if we're going to do this back in the other direction, we need to give it an array. The array has an object inside it, or at least one object. So there's my array index 0. It's got an object inside, and let's just have a look at that object. So a few bits and pieces going on. Legend name, line color, that's handy. So again, we can dynamically change all that. Point dot false, blah, 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 and symbol. So this one here, so that's clearly, that's good. I like that. That's pretty simple to work with. So let's think. So I'm actually going to set the whole thing to nothing. Let's just see just what happens if I say set line graph descriptions. Let's see if it'll just take a null because that's gonna pass it nothing. Yeah, totally happy with that. So in other words, I've said don't show anything. Now we should be able to call our where is it? Remove ex2. Remove quite happily, so no one's complaining, and we're good to go. So what we're going to do is just make sure we can go through the same step again, which is going to be was it this one here? Oh, this is the one with the typo, but let's just put that back. So pt1s. So we're going to bring it back. So now the historizer knows it, and the last thing we need to do is put it back on the line graph descriptions. So I should be able to copy this. So that should be something I can copy. So I'm just going to make, let's just see what it looks like when I paste it. Yeah, so it's giving me an array of an object, and it's got all the stuff for me. I mean, that's lovely. That's nice of it to do. So I'm just going to call that my line settings is equal to, so var my line settings is equal to all of this. And we'll just OK that. So that's now inside my line settings. If I was to, you can see that it lives. And the final thing, I'm just going to say my chart my chart dot set line graph descriptions, and I'm going to pass in my line settings. There we go. So that was good. It was good. I mean, I'm quite happy with that itself. So can we now? I mean, let's see, because we've now got the ability to do more than one. Let's see if we can add another one to it, because so the first thing I'm going to do is let's bring in another one. Let's bring in my int1 and just make sure that works. And also as well, something just to bear in mind, the code I'm writing here, we can just copy and paste this out into a function in Twinkle HMI, or you can write it into that JavaScript box, and it will just run this code. So it's up to you to, obviously, I can put it in a function in these videos, but hopefully you can see it's just this code that I'd be using somewhere else. So I tend to write my code first in Chrome, because Chrome allows me to write JavaScript and activate it straight away. And then when I'm happy with it, I just go back and copy paste and go, okay, so when let's say, for example, I wanted my historize my int2 to work, inside the JavaScript, I could just write this with my int2 there. And then that starts it on the historize, and the remove is just that. So yeah, even in this video, because this video is getting quite long now, so I want to keep it fairly short. I probably won't write this into Twinkle HMI, but this is the code I would write under the button, or I'd put it into a function, something along those lines. So again, if ever you want anything added, let me know. Put it in the comments. I believe you can do comments on Teachables, and we'll add it. So PLC main my int1. I'm just going to say yes, that's what I want to do, and that should be fine. Error, no error, good. The second thing I want to do is add to my line settings. So what I might just do is I'm just going to copy and paste this out. And this is going to be my line settings too. I could have added this. I mean, this is an array. I could have pushed new settings to it, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to copy and paste. Let's just make a new object that's got two things in there. So y-axis ID, this thing has an ID. So I'm going to attach it to the same ID, and I'm just going to tell it you're going to be number 1. The other thing I'm going to just slightly play with is I'm just going to change some of these around. So that's line color. I'm just going to swap one of the RGB values, just hopefully so we can see something different. -1, -2. So that's my line settings too. Happy with that. And then lastly, set line graph descriptions. Let's set that to 2. And there we go. So yeah. I'm going to call it a day at that, actually. So I'm not actually going to put that into the buttons. As I said before, you just copy and paste this code up into it. So as a little recap, what we was able to do there is we were able to inspect what was already being done. We could actually say retrieve. Did we do a retrieve? What was it called? Let's just look it up because I don't want to just finish a video on a little bit of confusion. Let's, so historize, get. So what we did first is I'd set up a manual historized symbol and I was able to get it. Now that's ideal because one of the things as well I will just say is when you do add ex2, at the moment it's not supporting milliseconds in this style. So on my trial run through all of this, I put 100 milliseconds and it said no, it's an incompatible type. You actually have to type in 0.1 seconds with a capital S. So that's just one of those things. So again, reported to Infosys just to say, hey, it's a little mod that needs to be done on the actual page itself. Just bear in mind, if you were to do this one, it'd come up with invalid type. Just bear that in mind. But what works on our side, and it works on every example I do, is if I don't know the settings or something's not working right, set it manually and then get it and say, hey, what settings do you think it should be? And it gives you the settings. It says, hey, again, there's the settings that you need to set this up. Use those. So once we did get, we then found that we could do update, and update we could just trigger recording enable, recording true and false. What we saw from that is that the previous historized settings remain. So that carries on, that keeps living. We're just starting and stopping the historizer. The next thing we did is we did remove. We actually removed the symbol away from the historizer itself, the historizer extension. And at that point there, the trendline graph was upset because it was still trying to show a historized symbol that didn't exist anymore. So we knew that at that point there we had to change the line graph definitions and say, hey, don't worry about that, remove that for the minute, and when I bring it back I'll tell you about it again. So there's that step to make. The minute we removed it, it actually removed the data of the historized as well. So just bear that in mind. If you want to be resetting data on a historized symbol, remove it, put it back in again. That's one way of doing it. Just make sure as well, a lot of these things, these adds, and I mean, let's even look at this remove. They have callback functions. These functions are callback functions when the process has been not necessarily done in an extension, but it's definitely been accepted by the extension. So there may be some time delay still while the extension's doing its job. We don't really know that because at that point there, we're living in this very asynchronous world. I've asked someone to do something on a remote part. It may also be asynchronous, but it may reply to us saying, yeah, no worries, I've accepted that. You gave me a valid command. That doesn't necessarily mean it's doing it instantly. So just bear that in mind. So I'd just be a little bit apprehensive by triggering a remove and add immediately, just in case it says, I was just about to add that thing that I'm going to remove. I won't, I'll just leave it there. So again, just double check. You could probably actually stack a few things together and say, remove it, get it, and see if it fails and says, yeah, no, it hasn't got it, or all the time it's getting it, just keep saying, all right, just keep getting it until it finally disappears, and then add it again. So maybe a little hack for clearing data on Historize. We showed that add works. Just bear in mind, don't use milliseconds, use seconds and points of a second. And the other thing that we did was we asked it to get the line graph descriptions, and it just gave us an array of objects with all of these values in there. And again, just play around, set the graph up as you'd like first time manually, and then tell it to get the settings, and then you can see what they are. Just copy and paste them into your project. That's probably an easy way of doing it. That's it. I'm going to call it a day on that video. I hope that's helped anyone and all of you out there who used to engage mine.